It's Geraldine's routine.
Hello and welcome to Mixology History. Here in this very first episode, we're going to be talking about the difference between bartending and mixology. Now, what you saw in that previous clip there was a bad example of bartending actual. But the history behind it is that I was videotaping a wedding for a couple, and the whole Manhattan theme was very important to them. They're big bourbon lovers. They met in Manhattan, and so their signature cocktail was the Manhattan. So I went up to the bartender and I asked him to make me the drink so I could videotape it and include it in the couple's wedding video during the cocktail hour section. I didn't expect him to pull out a jigger. I really didn't expect him to get too fancy, but I would have hoped that he would have made the drink correctly because after all, the bride and groom are going to see it. Of course, I didn't include it because it was just so horrible, as you're going to see. But let's go back and take a look at what happened. So the first thing is, he pulls out a wine glass. Now, there's martini glasses there. Any decent hotel or bar will know the difference between a wine glass and a martini glass. The second issue is, he gets Jack Daniels. Now, the bride and groom are bourbon lovers. Technically, Jack Daniels is not a bourbon only because they filter it. And the truth is that the original Manhattan was made with rye because rye was more common to Canada and New York, hence the term Manhattan. And bourbon you would find in the South, and you typically find those in other cocktails like the Old Fashioned. Nobody's going to come after you if you use bourbon instead of rye, but the original was made with rye. And even if you did want to use bourbon, I wouldn't recommend Jack Daniels. It's got a very different flavor profile, and quite frankly, it's got a taste that just doesn't really suit the cocktail. It's great for mixing. It's good for Jack and Cokes, Jack and Ginger. I know the Rat Pack loved their Jack Daniels. Back then, 50 years ago, it was a very, very different spirit. If it wasn't made in a factory, it was more like what craft bourbon is today. So now the next issue is he's halfway done. He doesn't measure the Jack Daniels whiskey in this case, and he just dumps a cherry in there. I guess he's trying to save time. No big deal. Next, he comes and he pours the sweet vermouth, and it looks like he's pouring almost twice as much vermouth as he is to whiskey. Now, if you look at the cocktail recipe, it clearly states it's always 2 parts whiskey to 1 part sweet vermouth. Lastly, he just sticks a straw in there and hands it to you. I'd never seen a straw used in a wine glass. He doesn't stir it. I assume maybe it was probably, to stir it, but he doesn't even do that. As you saw, I thanked him and I took the drink. I didn't even bother to taste it myself. I typically don't drink when I'm working, but the other issue is I wasn't going to use this in their wedding video. They would have been horrified. Now we're going to make a Manhattan the correct way. Now, it's always been my belief that it should be served in a stemmed martini glass. If you say Manhattan on the rocks, they'll put it on the rocks, but otherwise, it should always be served straight up. And you always want to stir clear spirits. The only time you want to shake a cocktail is when it's got fruit juices in it. Other than that, clear cocktails always get stirred. So you get your cocktail glass from the freezer. I like to keep it in the freezer. Generally that is for martinis, but I like to keep all my glassware cold, especially when it's a cold drink that's not on ice. And then we get our mixing glass filled with ice, as much as we can, as you can fit in there. Don't worry about it. You're going to have plenty of room because this is all going to melt a little bit in a little while. We want to get a good brand rye. Maybe not your best, but definitely one that you would drink alone because this drink is mostly rye. So we're going to start off with my favorite, Michter's. Reasonably priced, delicious. Like I said, you could drink this straight or you can mix it, and I don't feel guilty about mixing it. 2 ounces of rye. 1 ounce of vermouth. The original Manhattan was made with Abbott's bitters. You can't find this anymore. They've gone out of business because Angostura sued them for copyright infringement of some sort. This is a new brand of Abbott's, which was recreated or resurrected by my friend Darcy at Art of Drink. I'm going to put a dash in here just because it is a Manhattan. But I'm also going to use the Angostura, another dash. Now, what is optional is the orange bitters. I'm using Devil's Larder. You don't have to. Sometimes they put an orange peel. I like orange bitters, so I'm going to use a few drops of that. Now the rest is simple. Just stir. Now once you feel the outside of this glass getting nice and ice cold, you know it's almost ready. You don't want to completely melt the ice, but you do want the drink nice and cold. Now, let's talk about the garnish. You could use these cherries that you get in the supermarket. If you buy them over by the drink mixers, they're going to be more expensive than if you get them over by the ice cream. It's interesting how that works, right? You could also use these fancier Lujardo cherries. You should garnish it. I'm going to use one of these. I didn't get the ones with the stems, as you can see, so I gotta have to skewer it with a toothpick. Let's give this a stir. Get our strainer. Give it a pour. Garnish it with your cocktail cherry. Put it in there any way you like. And that's really it. You see, it's a very, very simple drink. Again, I didn't expect this guy at the wedding to go through all of this. I did expect him to measure even with a shot glass. You could even use, a regular shot glass and put 2 parts to 1 part. I didn't care about the bitters, although the bitters were there. I know there's rye behind that bar. Usually Jim Beam is like your cheapest rye you could buy. Like I said, I like Michter's a lot better, and for a few dollars more, I really enjoy it. But it's not a difficult cocktail to make. It's one of the simplest ones in the world. The only question is, do you have the bitters on hand? Otherwise, if you don't have, the means to measure 2 parts of whiskey to 1 part vermouth, I don't know, just have a rum and coke or something else. I'm going to enjoy this. It's been a rough day. Cheers. Hope to see you again soon.
Lift those puppies off the ground. Swing those hips and shake them down.
Let's hump, let's jump, let's thumpity bump.
It's Geraldine's routine.